Sometimes sales meetings, they can be amazing. You close deals, everyone's excited. And then sometimes, well, they're not so great. Today, we're going to dive into making sure your sales meetings are always the good kind. We're looking at this article from Meet Record called Mastering Meeting Challenges, an ultimate guide to sales success. It's got a lot of great stuff for sales and revenue leaders. And to help us unpack it all, we have Nova, who knows a ton about sales.
Yeah, there's a lot writing on these meetings. Right off the bat, this article says 70% of senior execs think meetings are unproductive. That's a ton of wasted time and missed chances.
Yeah, that's a little scary for sure. But before we even get to sales-specific stuff, let's talk about the problems that happen in pretty much every meeting.
Oh, yeah, for sure. The article hits all the big ones. No agenda, people can't communicate, nobody's paying attention. It's like you go to a restaurant expecting a five-star meal, but you don't even look at the menu. Or even worse, everyone at the table orders completely different food and then wonders why the meal doesn't work.
Oh, I've definitely been in those meetings where it feels like we're all speaking different languages. And what about when the tech fails? The screen freezes, dead silence. It's like
Ugh.
someone just hit the record scratch.
Totally. It just kills the energy. Even if you have the best pitch, if the tech fails, it just looks unprofessional. And then even if the meeting is good, if you don't write anything down or don't follow up, it's like you had a great conversation and then forgot everything about it.
That's so true.
Yeah.
But, let's get into the sales-specific challenges. The stakes are really high here. The article talks about 3 types of meetings that are tough to get right.
The first one is when you're meeting with senior execs or big teams, you have all these different people, they all care about different things. You have to make sure your message works for everyone, and you have to be on point. Even a small mistake can seem huge in that setting.
Yeah, it feels like you're walking a tightrope in those meetings. And then there's objection handling and negotiations. That's where your team really has to show what they can do.
It is. You have to be assertive, but not too pushy. You have to deal with their concerns head on, but also build trust and make it feel like you're working together.
Right. You want everyone to win, not turn it into a fight.
Yeah.
And finally, there's the firefighting meetings or problem-solving meetings. When a deal is about to fall apart or a client is really unhappy, you have to think fast, act fast, and most importantly, show empathy.
Right. It's easy to just want to fix it as quickly as possible. But you have to show the client that you get why they're upset and show them that you really want to find a solution that works for them.
Okay, so now we know what we're up against. Let's talk about how to win. The article breaks it down into 3 phases: before the meeting, during the meeting, and after the meeting. Like a playbook for sales meetings. Let's start with before the meeting. The article really emphasizes that you need to understand the customer's needs before you even walk into the room.
Yeah, it's not just about knowing your product really well. It's about knowing your client just as well. What are their problems? What are their goals? What keeps them up at night? The more you get their world, the better you can tailor your approach.
Okay, this is where it gets really cool. They talk about creating what they call playlists of calls, like a library of the best calls your team has made for different meeting types.
I love that. It's like having a cheat sheet for success. So let's say you have a meeting with a senior exec. You could look at all the calls where your team did really well with similar meetings and see what worked, what questions they asked, even how they sounded.
That's brilliant. You learn from your wins and avoid the mistakes. And of course, don't forget about the tech. Make sure everything is working, your connection, your sound. Have a backup plan just in case.
Absolutely. All those tech glitches we talked about, they can really distract everyone, make you look bad. Just taking a few minutes to make sure everything is good to go makes a huge difference.
So we've got our plan for before the meeting. Now, what about during the meeting? What are some ways to make the most of that time with our clients?
Well, first, communication. The article is really big on being clear. And knowing our audience, we have to make sure we're not using too much jargon. Keep it simple, keep it relatable, make sure everyone is on the same page.
I think we can all agree that too much jargon is a meeting killer.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, next is building trust. That's super important in any sales meeting. The article talks about being transparent and honest. It's not just about selling your product. It's about being a trusted advisor, someone who actually wants to help the client succeed.
Yeah, that's so important. Clients can tell when you're not being genuine, being real, being helpful, focusing on the relationship. That's what makes the best salespeople stand out, not just trying to close the deal. And that brings us to a classic mistake, sales monologuing. We've all seen it. The sales rep just goes on and on about their pitch. They forget to actually listen to the client.
Yeah, it's like they're giving a TED Talk, not having a conversation. That's a sure way to lose the deal. So how do we avoid doing that?
You got to become a master of, active listening. Asking good questions, digging into what the client says, paying attention to their body language. That's how you connect with them and figure out what they really need.
Makes sense when you really listen. You're not just getting information, you're making a connection.
Exactly. And, speaking of too much information, the article talks about decision fatigue. When you have so many choices, it's overwhelming. Well, clients feel that too, especially in sales.
Oh, absolutely. Like I was trying to pick a new phone plan a while ago. There were just so many options. I was so overwhelmed, I just stuck with my old plan.
That's decision fatigue in action. And we have to be aware of that in sales meetings. Don't throw a million options at them. Help them decide by giving them a few solutions that really fit what they need. Less is more.
Good point. It's about guiding them, not overwhelming them. Okay, another thing the article talks about is taking notes. How do you write down all the important stuff without getting distracted from the conversation?
It's tough, yeah. Trying to write down every single word while also talking to the client, you're going to miss stuff. Like those little things they say that tell you a lot, they suggest using some tools like conversational intelligence platforms. These things can actually transcribe your meetings as they're happening and even pick out the key points.
Wow, that's amazing. It would free you up to really focus on the client.
Exactly.
Mm.
Speaking of changing the game, let's talk about what you do after the meeting. This is where you make sure everything you talked about actually happens.
Right, because a meeting without follow-up is like a seed without water. It has potential, but it's not going to grow.
Great analogy. So, what does good follow-up look like? Well, the article says it's about accountability. Figure out the next steps, who's doing what, and have a system to track how things are going. It's also about capturing the voice of the customer, all those little things they tell you during the meeting. That's valuable for everyone in the company, not just sales.
You mean like stuff that can help with product development, marketing, even customer service?
Exactly. Think about it. You're talking to the clients directly. You're hearing what their problems are, what they want, what they hope for. That's gold for any company.
So how do we make sure we're writing down and sharing all that feedback?
Well, first, don't just rely on your memory. Have a way to write down those important things during and after the meeting. Some CRMs have features for tagging customer feedback, so it's easy to find and share with everyone.
Good tip. And there are also those meeting intelligence tools that can analyze calls and pull out the important feedback automatically.
Those are getting better all the time. They can be a game changer for sales teams who really want to use that customer feedback.
And let's not forget about all those other opportunities that come up in meetings, like upselling, cross-selling, referrals. They're like hidden treasures.
Totally. You just got to keep your ears open and have a way to write them down and do something about them. Like maybe a client mentions a new project, or they say they love a feature they're not even using yet. Those are great chances to build a stronger relationship and do more business with them.
So what you do after the meeting is more than just sending a follow-up email. It's about keeping the conversation going, building the relationship, and looking for those opportunities.
Exactly. The meeting might be over, but you're still working on the relationship.
So we've talked a lot about how to make sales meetings better, from getting ready beforehand to what to do after. But what are like the key takeaways? Things our listeners can use right now to improve their meetings?
It all goes back to those three phases we talked about: before, during, and after the meeting. Like a three-legged stool, you need all three legs for it to be stable.
I like that. So starting with before the meeting, what's one thing our listeners can do today to be more prepared?
I'd say check out those playlists of calls, the ones the article mentioned. Pick a situation, like dealing with objections or a tough negotiation. Then look at your team's best calls for those situations. You're turning your wins into a system you can repeat.
So instead of just saying, be prepared, we're giving them a